Secretary of State Kyle Ardoin, who's running for the Secretary of State's office. As you know, there is a big Secretary of State's race in November, 2 weeks from tomorrow. Early voting starting tomorrow. Kyle, how you doing?
I'm great, and you, Moon?
I'm doing just fine. I know that they had a story of Louisiana voter records for sale in the dark web. And I want to get it straight from you, what's going on, because I know some people have made a big deal about it. So I'm just asking you, what's going on with that? Has something happened with the, quote, dark web dealing with reports of putting information out?
Well, I can assure the people of Louisiana that their personal identifying information has not been compromised. It is still secure. What an opponent of mine ran crazy on is that what is out there is a commercial list, kind of like campaign walk lists.
Yeah.
That's what's out there and has been out there before it was done in 2017. I mean, this happens every year. We get articles like this, but somehow a candidate believed that personal identifying information wasn't protected, and it is protected, and it is not compromised, so all voters' information is safe. This is just a list that can be purchased. The Republican Party purchased it. The Democratic Party purchased it. I mean, anybody can purchase it. Mostly consultants purchase it, and, it gets out there, but it's no more than generic information.
So what was the accusation? I'm just kind of curious because I just kind of read it. I read it that it happened in multiple states, not just Louisiana.
Yeah, the accusation was that they had compromised our system along with 18 other states, and that just wasn't true. The information that they had obtained and were selling for $5,000, which, by the way, is what we sell it for, as the name, registration, party affiliation, that kind of thing. It just wasn't. It's your typical data, but no personal identifying information. Okay, because I just was kind of curious. Now, when you say you sell information, what information do people? This list you're talking about, what's on? What information? Because people would like to know is on that list. Sure. It's their name, their address, their registration information, whether they're Republican, Democrat, no party, independent, whichever, and their police jury district, their school board district, their senatorial district, just the generic information that is made available by law in the state of Louisiana. Okay. So but you're telling me is that common? Yes, that is very common, and most all states make that information available so that candidates, can get walk lists, they can see who chronically votes and that sort of thing, but nothing of personal identifying information that we use for ID purposes for when people go to the polls or has been compromised. Yeah. It's all secure.
What, this is an election that, I'm watching all elections around the country. And Louisiana's not really participating, and I know you're a state election, not the Congress and all that stuff. But it is a concern here of what kind of turnout will be out there. Do you have any kind of prediction on turnout? Are you giving a prediction on how many people you think will go vote?
I haven't come up with a prediction yet. I mean, I have one in my head, which I'm hoping is false. But I want to see what early voting turnout will be in the first couple of days before I can give what I believe is an educated guess.
Is early turnout really, I've always said early turnout's really not an indication of voter turnout. And what I mean by that, I vote early just to make sure I'm not doing something on that day, but I know it's a Tuesday election, so I'll be working. But is that really any indication of how many people is going to turn? Is there a correlation between early voting and turnout, I guess is what I'm asking?
The correlation that I've seen over the years is the intensity. Not necessarily does early voting give us an accurate estimate, but it does give us a level of intensity. So if it's pretty heavy, the most early voting has ever been is about 26% of total turnout. Mm-hmm. So that's not necessarily an indicator, but intensity can be an indicator, a barometer of sorts. Are the Republicans turning out? Are the Democrats turning out? Who's more intensifyingly turning out than others?
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I didn't think there was a correlation between early turnout. I'm seeing some of these other states, because they have big elections, they're saying, well, we got more Democrats turning out than Republicans, or vice versa. And I'm going, does that really mean anything in the overall big picture of who turns out?
In the end, no, because so many people wait to vote on Election Day rather than early voting. It's just whether or not it's a significant turnout, like, in the presidential or in a gubernatorial. But again, the latest trends in the gubernatorial are only about 35% turnout, but presidential is almost 70%. So, last time we were looking at about a 28% for a midterm. Now we're probably, my guess is we're looking around 20%, just because there's not a whole lot of interest out there, and there's not a whole lot of competition generating interest.
Yeah, the congressional races would be a shock, and that would be, since you got 6 congressional districts, that would be the big pullout. The state races is what it is. Now, in your race, there's going to be a runoff. I say, now, I've been told different on this, but I'm going to mention it. It's normally, when you look at a race, you look at our state bill, we still got more Democrats than Republicans. Looks like to me it'd be a Democrat and a Republican. You think there's any way 2 Republicans get in a runoff?
That would probably be the exception. I doubt that it will. I just think that typically a Republican and a Democrat is going to get in the runoff.
And you got a lot of candidates to spread some voting out, too. You got a lot of candidates that can spread out a lot of the voting.
Yeah, there's only 2 Democrats in the race, and then there's 5 Republicans or 6 Republicans to spread it out, and then you've got independent or no party, I believe, or a couple of those anyway. So it's going to be interesting, but I still think it's an RD race in the end.
Twofold question: if you're elected, is there some changes you want to see in the department? And number 2, if you're elected, it's a big advantage going into next year, because whoever wins this election has to turn around and run again next year.
Right, it is an advantage, but the most important thing is that I offer the voters a seamless transition. Whoever takes over on December 18th goes right into qualifying in January for some legislative seats, open seats, due to term limits. We're looking at about 6 of them. Plus we have the spring elections for local issues and local races. And we have the legislative session, and then, you got to gear up for re-election, and you have the gubernatorial election. So I think experience is key. No on-the-job training for me. This has been a pretty tough campaign. I'm being hit from all sides and a lot of false information put out there. But, I just ask the voters to pay attention to my record, my conservative record, fighting against liberal organizations to try to turn the state purple or blue. And I'm just focused on doing the job. This election's a big election, irregardless, and so I'm focused on doing my job. I
take it you were disappointed the governor, I think we may have even talked about this, actually decided to do away with the bid that was given out, the 10-year bid. And my question is, does that have to be rebidded? And if it does the same companies both get to come in and, 2 or 3 companies get to come in and bid on it again?
Well, it's going to be, to me, it's going to be the same exact scenario that we face. This is going to be probably the same 3 companies, if all 3. It may just come down to the 2 big ones. I think you're going to be faced with the same situation. I tried to tell folks that. I think this is nothing more than me being sandbagged by the administration because of my vote in protecting the Second Amendment on bond commission. They weren't pleased with that, and I think this is political retribution against me.
But didn't the second place companies the ones that bickered and did the complaint, and they had some ties to John Bell Edwards, one of the lobbying group giving money to Bell Edwards during his campaign.
Oh, absolutely. And,
that's what I saw. I thought, wow, the governor, Mr. Honor Code, and he's got buddies that give him money and now made this a big political deal, which it may or may not be, but I'm just saying that I got worried about Bell Edwards and his ties.
Yeah, it sure looks that way. And one of the lobbyists handled his inauguration for him. So, the other one raised money for him. So, interesting.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, Kyle Ardoin, anything else you want to add?
Well, I just want to say that when people need to remember to vote, early voting starts tomorrow, October 23rd, and through the 30th, except for the Sunday, the 28th. So everyone get out and vote early, but not often.
Yeah, I understand. All right. Thanks, Kyle. Best of luck. Hi, y'all. Welcome back. Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us. 844-766-6607. Hickson has a hotline. As you know, LSU won a big game. The big game's in 2 weeks. Number 4, LSU. Number 1, Alabama. LSU has a chance to beat them. I just tell you straight up, man, after watching Purdue wear Ohio State out Saturday, after that game, I was kind of keeping an eye on the other game, too. Anything happens in college football. It just does. And if you're not a college football fan, don't go anywhere just yet, because we'll be back. We'll return to politics in a minute, but I told y'all James Carville's crazy.
We're not exactly leaving politics, by the way.
No, this is a lot of politics. James Carville's nuts. He abused women. And they keep putting him up there and putting him up there and putting him up there. And I'm telling you, the man's insane. So they let him write a piece in The Advocate. James Carville, LSU targeting call, Devin White suspension reveals SEC Alabama collusion. And I heard people talking about this. And by the way, I watched the play. I don't think White should have been suspended either. I don't. You can call me a typical fan. That's fine. I don't think he should have been suspended. I think they ought to come up with a new way, man. If you're a player and you're never getting a bunch of penalties and cheap shots, I don't know if they ought to kick you out on one play. Number 2, I wish Nick Saban, I know he's not going to do it, I wish Saban would come out and do a press conference and say, let White play. I'm telling you, let him play. And then let him play on next 2 weeks on a Saturday, and the best team is going to win that game. Okay? It doesn't mean the best overall team, but the best team will win that night. That's how it happens. But James Carville, I'm telling y'all, you keep putting him out there. You're dealing with crazy. And he is crazy. I mean, I think the guy's ludicrous myself, and I always thought that about him. And the governor's jumping in. The guy that told us we're going to get rid of LSU football is jumping in this. Carville says, as much as I try to forget it, 2016, he talks about the today and light bulb went off in my head. Oh, serpent head. A light bulb went off in that head. Duh. Let's go back to 2016. Hurricane Matthew moved the LSU-Florida game and, more importantly, revealed the latest evidence of Southeastern Conference love affair with Alabama. As I said then, every LSU fan knows that the SEC has literally been in a tank for Alabama the whole time and now add Florida to the list. It was any doubt the SEC crew in zebra stripes made it clear Saturday night the league is in cahoots with our Crimson Tide. Yes, it appears there is collusion. So now, according to the ignoramus of James Carville, and I told you, the guy's evil. The guy's a nut. A nut. And yet, guys put on the paper all the time. He abused women. I remember that like that was yesterday, and he gets to talk about LSU football. And now he's saying Alabama and the SEC. So that means, on that hit, Brandon, we had an SEC official back there going, okay, how can I get White out the game because they play Alabama in 2 weeks? Carville believes the man thought like that. And I'm sure Saban called the SEC, say, hey, can you get White out the game? I need him out the game to have a chance to beat LSU. Remember, and I'm listening to all the fans, Alabama ain't playing nobody. LSU played all the hard schedule. LSU, I'm predicting LSU 49, Alabama 12. I'm just going by what they're telling me, Brandon. Everybody's in my head going, man, Alabama ain't played nobody. LSU played all these. Well, if that's the case, this is an easy win for LSU. Why are we panicking over this? But it's old James Carville coming to the panic, believing that Alabama, with the SEC officials, so the guy's sitting there late in the game. LSU's got the game won. They really won the game whole time. Mississippi State, gee whiz. Anyway, so Brandon, the SEC officials going, okay, if White gets close to the quarterback, I'm going to throw him out the game because I want Alabama to beat LSU in 2 weeks. I mean, folks, I'm telling you, some of you people out there that are probably thinking this, what the hell are you thinking? You're thinking like James Carville. You're thinking like James Carville. I don't want to ever think like James Carville. And that's what I'm hearing. Brandon, I started hearing this right after the game. I just started going, wow. Now, Brandon, I told you Saban won't do it, but if I was Saban, I'd come back and say, look, they called the man. I'd let the man play. It's the big game. Let him play. Now, the problem with that is you have people all over the country doing the same thing. And I think the guy wish he'd play. Anyway, I'll get back in it. He even, the bright one, James Carville, even goes back to Ronald Reagan. Watch this comparison. This is ignorant. And then there come the governor. Louisiana's governor asked for an explanation after targeting. Because, see, governor, they might can explain it to you, but they can't learn it for you. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, we're going to jump gears. A friend of mine and got a heads-up paw. Robert Travis Scott joins us. Robert, how you doing, bud?
Hey, good morning. beautiful day in Louisiana from what I can see.
I'm telling you, man, great to be alive. It's great to get you back on the program again. I appreciate you taking a few minutes. A lot of people requesting, talking about the amendments. So I want to go over all amendments with you. But one thing I want to do, y'all have the amendments on your website telling people what the amendments do if you vote for or against?
That's right. And it's, the organization is the Public Affairs Research Council, but we're just known as PAR, P-A-R. So if you look up parlouisiana.org, O-R-G, PAR Louisiana, you'll see our website, and we've got our guide to the constitutional amendments, and we'll tell you, if you just want a real quick hit, you can just read the top of each one and see what a vote for or against would do. But if you want to go deep and you got questions about it, we got all kinds of information in there so you can dig in and figure it out for yourself.
Okay, do y'all, before we get to them, do y'all take a stance anyway, or y'all just lay it out there and let people decide for themselves?
Well, Moon, what we say here is PAR takes no position on these ridiculous constitutional amendments.
Yeah, man, we've had enough of them.
But the truth is, we just try to help you decide seriously. So. Okay,
and I think that's important, and that's why I called you to get you on. I had a lot of people request. So if somebody wants to read them, parla.org, correct?
parlouisiana.org. .org. Yep.
Okay, Parlo. I make sure I put L.A., but I'm going to spell it out just so I have it in front of me. When somebody asks, I can send them to you. All right, let's start off with amendment number 1. And by the way, there's 6 amendments on the ballot in November. How many in December?
None.
So this is
thank
it.
goodness,
this is it.
Because that would have cost a lot of extra money to probably run a statewide ballot, which we probably didn't need. So it's good to keep those things on the statewide ballot, and be prepared before you go in there. You don't want to go in that voting booth and see these propositions for the first time.
No, by the way, I think I was thinking about the taxes in Lafayette. Brandon, don't we have taxes on both November and December?
I think December for sure. I don't know about November.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go. Amendment 1, and you don't have to go into mega detail. I'll Q&A with you. What does it do, for and against, and talk about it?
Well, what this would do is if someone is convicted of a felony, they'd have to wait until 5 years after the completion of their sentence before they could run for public office or even be appointed to a position of honor or trust in the state. So basically, it just says felons, you can't get right back in and run for office right after you get out of jail is basically what this means. And we used to have this. We had it at constitutional amendment that passed in 1998. For 15 years, you were prevented from doing it. But the Supreme Court overturned that because the legislature kind of screwed up the way they wrote it. So that's where we are with that one. And it's just a question of whether you think you want your convicted felons to wait 5 years.
So right now, a convicted felon comes out of jail, whatever, they can run for office.
That's right. And there's an existing law that says, if you're in office and you're convicted of a felony, you're out, right? So this, if you have had a past felony, you want to run for office, you're open to go ahead and run right now.
Yeah.
As long as you've finished your term of imprisonment, which could mean probation and imprisonment.
And we've seen people run and win too, so it's interesting. But that is Amendment 1. So if you vote against it, basically somebody coming out, their time, they can run for office. If you vote for it, they got to wait 5 years. Is it that simple?
That's basically it.
Okay. Now, the other one is the one that's probably, I'm going to say, Amendment 2, unanimous verdict for all felony cases. This is the one that there's actually been some organization, money spent, people getting out there. Tell us about Amendment 2.
Amendment 2, is an actually significant amendment, very meaningful, and it is an issue that should be taken up one way or another in the Constitution. Unlike so many inconsequential amendments that we deal with that are just dealing on the margins, this is actually talking about fundamental law, and it's very, very important. So this one, number 2, is probably one of the most important amendments that I've seen in 2 decades in looking at what we do. But basically what it says is that in felony cases where you'd have to serve hard labor, right, you have to have a unanimous jury, whereas now it's 10 out of 12 that would have that you need for either an acquittal or a conviction. Now, capital murder cases, like if you're up for something where you have killed someone and you're up for the death penalty, that's already a unanimous jury that's required. And in some of these lesser felonies, you have a 6-person jury, and a unanimous jury is already required. It's these felonies in between where you'd be subject to confinement or hard labor. Might be armed robbery, for example, second-degree murder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those are the ones that right now require only 10 out of the 12. And under this constitutional amendment, it would be unanimous. And we're the only state, except for Oregon, that does not require a unanimous verdict in felony cases. So the federal courts require it also. So we are a little bit on an island on this one. And I think that's one of the reasons that this has attracted so much attention, both from conservative and liberal groups.
Yeah, they're both out trying to get this done. I guess the only side against it is they were concerned in Louisiana that, and I'm just telling you what I hear, that some people are concerned about it, is getting convictions on people that really did something, but powerful people can always get one or two jurors to go in the wrong direction. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you what's out there. But that's right. I
mean, the argument against it is that the current law is just more efficient.
Yeah.
And whereas sort of generally speaking, the district attorneys have come out in favor of this constitutional amendment, there are probably some DAs out there who have had some hesitation about it and don't care for it. And the U.S. Supreme Court has taken up this type of question before, and it has said that, yeah, you can have non-unanimous jury verdicts in the United States. So those would be some of the arguments against voting for it. But I think some of the arguments in favor have been mostly, look, I mean, there's been no question that this is, when you do the numbers, that this has had a disparate impact on minorities.
Yeah. Well, I think that what you look at, too, though, is, and I've said this all the time about taxes, and I'll say it about amendments, that if you don't have paid for, organized support for or against the amendment, Stelly bill was a great one. There was nobody against it but me. That organization to get it passed, and it ended up passing. This is the same thing. There's no organization out there, you know what I'm saying, that is going against this particular amendment and this particular law. So, and I'm not asking you to comment on this. I think it passed just because of that. I know people that are against it, but it just seems like a no-brainer with most people, so that's why you don't hear from them. You know, people running for office and things of that nature. You do, too. You probably know people that are against this changing. I'm not against it. I'm just giving you thoughts from talking to people.
No, I think that, you know, it seems like a lot of people I've talked to are, you know, in favor of seeing this pass, if for no other reason, just to say it sort of stops the gamesmanship by prosecutors. And like one of the state senators who was formerly in a prosecution office, you know, stood up and gave quite a good speech when this was being considered and said, look, you know, we've gamed the system with this 10 to 12. You know, we would sort of change what we would do. We would actually take a lesser felony and try to make it something worse, you know, just so we could get a non-unanimous jury in front of us instead of a 6-member jury. And he said, this is a distortion and that needs to end. That's not the best kind of system to have. And that was one of the reasons I think a lot of people, sort of knew the gamesmanship that was going on the prosecution side, and that this was just too tempting a system to try to steer things that way.
Yeah. Well, I just, between you and me, I don't see how they'll beat this back. I think we'll have this as soon as the vote's over. But once again, you're not here to tell us what to vote or how to vote.
You never know.
That.
You never know. I mean, I really don't know. I don't try to predict how these things will come out. I mean, you mentioned Stelly, you know, way back when, and you said there was nobody against it. And that was true in an organized campaign sense, right? There was no. It was 49% of the people
voted against it.
Voted against it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it was 51-49, and back in that vote, Mike Foster was the governor. Republican Renewal was running the party. Republican Women was doing fundraisers. Mike Foster was the one that helped push it. So all the side that I think should have been against it didn't. And matter of fact, a comment from Lobby was, we're not going to get involved. We don't think this could pass. And it passed. And that's why it passed. Had you had any money out there saying this was bad, it would have failed. So you are correct, but this is kind of a flip of that. This looks really good just because there's no organized opposition. I will agree with you. We don't know to the vote. I think you're correct. Let's do this, Robert. I know we went through two. I knew the first two would be like that. Let's go ahead and take a break. We'll come back and try to squeeze these other four in.
We can squeeze these others in quick.
Yeah, I knew you could, but these two were the ones I thought we'd spend a little bit more time on.
Yeah.
All right, Robert Travis Scott, our good friends of PARLouisiana.org, and you can find out for and against what your vote does on these amendments, PARLouisiana.org. You can find out for yourself on what way you want to vote. They're not taking sides. They're just telling you what happens if you vote for or against. We'll take a break. More with Robert Travis Scott on the other four amendments when we get back. Hi, hello. Welcome back. Moon Griffon Show. Robert Travis Scott heads up PAR, and you go to PARLouisiana.org, and you can, everything he's talking about the 6 amendments, which are on the ballot starting tomorrow, go read. They'll tell you what voting for and against means, and you can read them for yourself. All right, Robert, amendment number 3.
Well, this is a rather minor thing, doesn't come up very often, but basically, amendment number 3 would allow one local government entity to share equipment and personnel to another local entity. It's like a parish could help out a parish or a city could help out a parish.
Is that simple?
It's really that simple, and really you can do it now. It's just that the concern is that if you gave a loan a bulldozer to a fire department and they didn't give you compensation for the correct value of that, then some people think that would violate the Constitution. There's a real question whether that's even true, but basically this just makes it easier for the parishes to share stuff. So. Yeah,
you kind of wonder what could go wrong with that, but I just started thinking.
Well, there's supposed to be written agreements. We'll see what goes on with that. But
I was just thinking, Robert, if I'm next to you and I don't like you and you need something that might help you maybe win re-election because you got a little project you need to do, and I say nope.
Yeah, man, you're none of this is out of the question. That's exactly right. So. It's a healthy skepticism, man.
I understand. All right, that's 3. Let's go to 4.
Well, this one is about the State Transportation Trust Fund, and that's basically where all the fuel tax goes, right? And we're supposed to build roads with it and help out our ports and other things. And what's happened for years is they're also allowed to use the money for state police and traffic control purposes.
Yep, correct.
And so there's been this question about what that really means. And since this fund was created back in 1990, we've transferred $700 million to state police for this purpose. And a lot of people have said, no, that's not what the purpose of the gas tax is. If you've been paying too much for it, we want to stop this, and the only way to stop it is to go to the Constitution and stop it. As a matter of fact, the current legislature and governor have stopped doing it just in the last couple of years.
Well, so we need
to put it in the Constitution.
Yeah, we need the money to go to roads. Okay.
That's basically it.
Amendment number 5, which has to do with special property tax treatment.
Yeah, some people have a trust where they put their home into a trust and they can live in it and then, pass it on to, their grandchildren or whoever once they pass away. And what this amendment does is it says there are all these various tax exemptions that you can get for special circumstances in Louisiana, and that if you have a trust, you're eligible for those. You're already eligible for the homestead exemption with a trust, but this would just help you do that. This affects very, very few people.
All right. And number 5, phase in property tax increases.
Number 6.
Number 6.
Last one on there, and if you get hit with a huge property tax assessment where your assessment goes up by 50% or more, what this amendment would do is it would say, hey, wait a minute, we're not going to calculate your tax at the full amount. We're going to phase in the calculation of your tax over 4 years so you don't get a super big hit. So basically it eases the crunch if you get a giant property tax increase by your assessor. Now, if you get 40% increase, you're out of luck. You're paying the
but let me stop you real quick on that. The assessor can't raise that kind of tax on you, can they? 40, 50%?
What's that?
Assessor can't just raise a property tax on you like that 40, 50%.
Well, the assessor doesn't actually raise.
That's correct.
What the assessor does is they just assess the value of your home. And so, and then the tax collector, who's usually your sheriff in Louisiana, quite often the sheriff, they come in and they say, well, here's the millage that we're supposed to apply to that assessment, and here's your tax bill. Please pay it. And that's the way the system works. Under this constitutional amendment, the assessor's job doesn't change. I mean, they assess what they're doing, and if for some reason your neighborhood is exploding in values and your property value goes up over 50%, this only applies, by the way, to homestead exemption primary homes. So, but what we found in this is that the ballot language didn't quite match what the bill said. And if you read our guide, we kind of try to explain that because I think people might be confused reading the ballot language about what this actually does.
Okay. All right, Robert, you got it right in the limit, brother.
All right. Hey, let's come back and talk about sometime this statewide ballot we have. It's not a constitutional amendment, but for all these fantasy sports contests, we can have a lot of fun talking about that.
Well, that's not up and running yet, is it?
Oh yeah, but it's going to be on every ballot.
Well, no. Let me hold you. Let me hold you then. Let's talk about it right now. Don't go nowhere. Let me take a break. Be back, Robert Travis. I got a couple other questions I could ask you anyway. So we'll hold you another segment. Robert Travis Scott of POR, Louisiana.org, and find out about the amendments. Yeah, I forgot about that one. Come to think of it, we'll be right back. Hi, hello, welcome back, Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us. Robert Travis Scott of POR, our special guest. All right, Robert, the proposition, I'll say you're talking about the fantasy sports, authorized fantasy sport contest. Okay, this is a local issue. That's what you just brought up, and I'd be honest with you.
Well, yeah, and this is not a constitutional amendment, but everybody in the state will have this on their ballot when they walk in, and they're going to wonder, what am I voting on? And, hey, I saw some commercials in favor of this by the fantasy sports betting outfits that was on during the Saints game yesterday. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty funny ad. It's got a referee throwing a yellow flag at a guy for, ordering a pizza or something. It's saying, we're trying to take away your rights to sports betting. It's that basic. So it's some pretty funny stuff. But basically, this is not about betting directly on games. Okay, that's a different thing, and eventually, like they do in Las Vegas, there may be a change in our state law to, allow our casinos and whatnot to allow betting on that type of sports activity where you're actually betting on the outcome of the games. This is about fantasy sports contests, and in fact, it's called the Louisiana Fantasy Sports Contest Act. Mm-hmm. And it basically would say, hey, everybody's out there drafting players for their fantasy teams, and you know how that works. Are you on a fantasy team?
No, I played it one time when it first came out years ago, and I swore I'd never do it again. Matter of fact, if I'm watching sports and they bring up a tournament as fantasy football, I cut it off. That stuff doesn't do anything for me. I cut it off quick. I don't want to know who's going to get points for scoring a damn touchdown. I don't.
Gee, I wonder where you stand on this one.
I can't stand fantasy football. Matter of fact, fantasy football gets in my way. How about that?
It gets in the way of actually doing well.
It gets in the way of watching something with some intelligence. I'm sorry, that's just me.
I confess that I'm not a fantasy football or baseball or whatever player either, but I have a lot of friends who do. And, you know, they're basically a lot of them, there's different ways you can do it. You can bet among yourselves and go on ESPN or Yahoo, and they'll help you, run those games among your own little crowd there. But what this is about like DraftKings or FanDuel. Remember all those ads we used to see? Well, that type of activity where you're betting on a contest is what they like to call it. Others just say, hey, it's just plain gambling, right? Whichever way you interpret it, it's not allowed in Louisiana until this law came along. And this law basically said we're going to let each parish decide whether or not the people in that parish are able to engage in this type of fantasy sports betting. And so that's what this is about. You're deciding for your parish whether to allow it. But that doesn't mean it's legal quite yet.
I understand.
Still, the Gaming Control Board has to implement rules, and it's not even clear whether the locals are going to tax it or not. And if they did tax it, there might be another vote, maybe later on, that would allow the locals to decide whether to tax the activity. So we may face this on the ballot again in terms of just exactly what its impact would be.
Yeah, I know there was a bill out there that wanted to go to real sports betting. I know they passed it in Mississippi, and I think that's going to come back. Do you think if that ever comes back, and it is going to come back, will that be a local option deal? Because, back in the day when gambling was passed in some places and not, they said we would never have to worry about local option again.
Well, here you go.
I know. That's what they told us.
Who knew there'd be all these different new forms of gambling? And in Louisiana, we've got them all. I mean, we've just about every form there is, except the sports betting. And I think typically what you see with the sports betting is it would come to casinos, and it's just a matter of which casinos and what level you'd allow that to happen. But that's a future issue. The issue in front of you on the ballot is whether or not you want your parish to say it's okay for you to participate in DraftKings and FanDuel on your mobile device or your computer and play that game and potentially win money and, of course, potentially lose a lot of money. Because you pay fees to play those games.
I'm about to say, don't forget the loss part of it. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. All right, my friend, we'll do it again. Thank you so much for sticking around and visiting. We'll get you back on again very soon.
Polls.
Yep, no doubt about it. All right, Robert Travis Scott of PAR. That's parlouisiana.org. Find out about the Sixth Amendment for yourself. You can read it, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you, sir. God bless, brother. We appreciate it. All right, quick break. When we get back, who do we have next?
Josh Guillory.
Josh Guillory, running for Congressional District. We'll bring in Josh in just a minute. You're listening to the Moon Griffon. Hi, hello. Welcome back to the Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us. 844-766-6607. Hickson has a hotline. Before we get to my guest real quick, somebody made a scenario. They said what we ought to do is take the Louisiana NCAA and make them like the Louisiana High School Athletic Association. And we put all the elite programs over here like Bama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, USC, whoever, and let them play for their national championship. And then we take LSU and the rest of them, and we put them in this bowl, and then we put them in some over here, and then everybody can have their national championship. Sure. And nobody has to play Alabama unless you're an elite program. I think LSU's an elite program.
I was going to say,
Don't you
man.
I think LSU's a top 10 elite program. I think
they're playing like one right now.
Well, not only that, I'm talking about overall. Yeah. LSU's been an elite program for 40, 50 years, Brandon. I mean, they've had ups and downs, but they've had great teams. And but I was laughing at this thing. That's pretty good. Let's just, okay, we got all these teams, all the teams that everybody thinks cheats and the press loves them, and all. Let's put them in one division. Sound like Don Shiles and West Monroe.
Oh.
West Monroe's had a heck of a program.
They're number one in the state right now?
Absolutely. They can play with anybody, but I used to get frustrated because I'd watch Shiles crying about these private schools, and now we split it, and here we go. West Monroe.
9 different ones.
Somebody going to email me, moon@moongriffon.com, and curse me. Anyway, Josh Guillory says, I don't want to hear all that. I ain't gonna anyway, Josh,
no, we can talk football
Josh,
all day.
Congressional District, early voting starts tomorrow. I mean, this is it. This is 2 weeks to go with a week to vote and then a week off and then the final day.
That's it.
Well, how do you feel as far as the election? And I see your signs everywhere, so I know you're out there working.
We're working. You know, I feel real good. We've been doing this over a year now, and I tell you, I'm really...
It's been a year already.
It's been a year.
Wow.
We started early.
You
and,
did.
We did, and actually I got an interesting email over the weekend saying that someone screenshotted something. You know, I do answer all my Facebook messages directly, and I think it's important to stay in touch. But I got an email saying, well, yeah, Guillory, you know, he was handpicked to go against the incumbent by the establishment. I said, man, if you only knew. I was approached, all right. I was approached to get out of here, stop making all this trouble. But and I say that not really tongue in cheek, because it's serious, you know. And they keep saying voting records matter. Voting records matter.
Oh no, it does. I mean, and I've heard you. I've heard your message. I've commercials, whatever, your YouTube, whatever. You've been talking about the voting record the whole time.
That's it.
Is this a race that will be a runoff? That's the big question. Now, I've made the comment before, and I'll tell you, if you look at all the congressional races, it looks like the incumbent's going to walk in. And when I say walk in, they'll win it. They got a 50% plus one. But do you feel that way? Do you feel like this is a runoff race?
Well, we do anticipate a runoff, and
there's enough candidates in here to spread it out to make it a runoff race.
Absolutely. I think that favors us. You know, I feel like, and you'd ask me how's it going. You know, over the last year, man, I feel humbled, Moon. You know, all our volunteers coming out. You know, I love. We have to fundraise. We have to build momentum. We have to get on social media. But the thing that motivates me the most, other than knocking on doors and talking with my neighbors, is seeing how many people come out and volunteer, seeing those red shirts out there in the district, out these rice festivals and other festivals and things like that. But
you know, you are correct, though. Any incumbent that doesn't outright win and gets less than 50%, it is a problem. The other deal is, though, in December, the numbers go down.
That's right.
I want people to realize that the numbers go down, so who's going to vote in December in a runoff? You know, you're not going to have, I mean, you're not around Christmas, but you're within 2 or 3 weeks of Christmas in the runoff. I don't know, what was the runoff date?
It's on a Saturday, I believe.
There you go, yeah. I have to look it up.
December 6th, 4th, something like
8th,
that.
I believe.
8th.
Something like that.
So you're talking about 14 days away from Christmas, 18 days away from Christmas. So it does make a difference if you happen to get in a runoff.
That's right. And if you get in a runoff with an incumbent, as you indicated, you know, more people voted against the incumbent than they voted for the incumbent.
Oh, no, it becomes
important.
a problem for any incumbent. I'm not
Absolutely.
talking about Mr. Higgins. I'm talking about for anybody if you can get it to that point. What makes you feel that happens? I mean, you got to feel something, or you got a polling or something showing you that, hey, we got a shot at this.
My polling is my thumb is on the pulse, Moon, and I mean that. I've been beating the streets for over a year, all 9 parishes, our 2 precincts in St. Landry, and people, it's resounding. The overall message is we deserve a voice. We deserve a voice. We're a conservative district. We don't deserve a congressman that goes to Washington and tells us that he's conservative and votes to increase our national debt 3 times. That includes the 2 omnibus bills. But on his first vote, and I'm not here to bash Clay Higgins, but I'm a Republican challenging an incumbent Republican. And, you know, for years we send people to Baton Rouge, we send people to Washington, they say one thing, they do another. But on his first vote for any major legislation, he voted to increase our debt over $500 billion. I have kids, you have kids, we have grandchildren, nieces, nephews, everybody in this district does. What country do we want to hand to them? We're over $21 trillion in debt. Enough is enough. You know, we talk about infrastructure. Infrastructure is a huge part of my platform. But when we're paying this year alone $310 billion just to service the debt, we don't build bridges with that. We don't help education. We don't help our roads.
I think debt. It was really exasperated under Barack Obama.
Absolutely.
But it's still going up today.
We have the House, we have the Senate, we have the President. Look, we can't clone President Trump. He wants to cut spending. He's cut spending in the executive. He didn't fill, I think, 24,000 jobs in these agencies, which I think is great. But Congress has created the problem. And so Congress giveth, Congress can taketh away.
By the way, it's December 8th is the runoff. So that was interesting. Okay, you're out there talking to people because I'm listening to you and I've seen you around. What are the issues? What are 2 or 3 issues? You mentioned debt. We're seeing a caravan, which I think is 100% politically motivated from the election. Here they come. What should be the proper response? The president has talked about taking military, not National Guard, which, by the way, no National Guard becomes military really quick. And it's part of it. We understand it. But taking military and going and saying, enough's enough, you're not coming through.
Well, I think the president was clear. He said they're not getting through. They're not getting
through.
If
they get through, let them go through California. But I'm just saying, but I don't think you let them through. I think you turn them around. But sure. I mean, we can't. I can't believe we can't put pressure on Mexico to say, look, we give Mexico a lot. you want to keep getting, you want some things that we're going to do, you better turn that thing around. Because they act like they can't turn it around.
Absolutely. You know, we need to secure our border like Mexico secures its southern border, but you're absolutely right. Put the pressure on them from that aspect on it. We give them so much resources, so much support. I think you're spot on with that.
Yeah, I just think there's a way to stop it, and this is all political in nature, and the fact that the press is reporting on it. They think in some way this helps Democrats. I don't know how it helps Democrats. But they hoping Trump will have a mess up, I guess. I'm guessing they hope somebody. I would be willing to bet you they hope somebody gets shot at the border. Maybe to be a couple kids. I'm serious with you.
You know what's sad? You're correct.
I believe that's
right.
what they want. I believe just like when when McConnell's faced, they want somebody to jump up on the Republican side and shoot somebody or do something. So they're going to keep on antagonizing people, and it's called a mob. The people coming in, I mean, they're getting water and food to be traveling like they're traveling, so somebody's funding it.
Absolutely, and you know when you ask me what's a big issue within our district, also two issues that go hand in hand: flooding, drainage, and flood insurance premiums. You know, I was on a forum last week and we started talking about flood insurance premiums. You know, right now we have the NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program. It's regulated by Congress. You know, that means Congress is 100% in charge of regulating the price, regulating premiums, regulating the regulations. Mm-hmm. You know, Moon, we don't like universal health care. I don't think we should stand for universal flood care. And I mean that. Yeah. You know, the private sector.
I don't like the idea of that either.
Absolutely. The private sector is in a far better position to allocate risk than the federal government. As our congressman, what I'm going to do is push to transition, if not to 100%, but more to the private sector led flood insurance market as opposed to the federal government. I trust the private sector. I trust the business leaders far more than any bureaucrat in Washington, and I think it's inexcusable for a congressman to vote to increase flood insurance premiums. Another reason why I'm running.
I'm really concerned when the federal government if you go back and look, when the federal government took over the program for schools, for loans for children at school, now it's off the chart. When they took over loaning money with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they took that over, and guess what? That went out of control, caused a recession. Everything they took control of Social Security. There is no money in Social Security. Everything they take control of, they destroy. And that's what big government's done all over the world.
But look, Moon, our party, my party, is responsible right now. We can do this. I know we can't snap our fingers and just have a 100% private sector-led flood insurance program. I get that. But we need to make the step to do that. It wasn't until the 60s until we had the NFIP, and I know that our leaders in the business sector, our private sector, us, you and me, our neighbors, we have the answers here. Someone in Mamou knows the solutions better for the people of Mamou than anybody in Washington, D.C.
Well, the other thing on the flood deal, and I don't disagree with you, but the only problem is we build homes and businesses where flooding is going to take place. And I don't care, the best flood program in the world is never going to stop a rain or a flood or a hurricane or whatever you want to call it coming in and doing what they do. That's Mother Nature. Nothing to do with man-made global warming. Wish I could have heard the argument the other night. I've been nutting up on it, but nothing to do with that because that's a ridiculous subject to even talk about. But you can't build homes and businesses in areas where the water's going to run and expect to ever get away with that. It's just never going to happen.
Well, why not? The federal government says we're going to insure you. The federal government says, and by the way, even if you don't, we're going to come in, we're going to rescue you. So where's the incentive? I promise you the private sector wouldn't allow for that. Again, it's not an overnight fix, but we have got to start to get the private sector back involved, and whether it's a balance, whether it's a combination, whether it's a partnership, I don't know, but I know this. I don't trust the federal government. Neither should you.
Are you concerned? What are people saying about the oil and gas industry? It was such a hard, in your district, it was the bread and butter. And yet, with the governor's suits, legacy lawsuits, all that kind of stuff, people like those jobs to return here if it was possible. Absolutely. Are they talking about, because you have a lot of people in your district going to Texas to work now.
I know, and it breaks my heart. We had at one point, I believe, over 200 wells in the state. Now we have, 56 wells that we can tap in, maybe. I mean, that oil and gas, it's the second biggest industry in our district. Agriculture is number one, but oil and gas is a close second. I have friends that are oil and gas. We all have friends that are in oil and gas, whether in the service-related jobs or directly in drilling. But I know this. I will fight. I will be a vigorous advocate for our oil and gas industry to come back. No matter whatever we have to do, lawfully and ethically, let's go fight for them.
Less than a minute. What do you want to tell the voters?
This is important. We have early voting coming up starting tomorrow. We have November 6th election. Look, I'm a Republican challenging an income Republican. If you're listening, if you're a Republican, you find yourself conservative, and you find all things are equal between me and our current incumbent, I ask you, vote for the Republican that lives in this district. Vote for the Republican that has as experience as a business owner, as a small business owner that has created jobs and that knows how to create jobs and that will go fight tirelessly to bring jobs back to this district. I disagree with Clay Higgins' vote to increase our debt, our flood insurance premiums, missing 38 roll call votes since last year, and, of course, living outside our district. I mean no disrespect for that, and I humbly ask for your support this election.
All right, Josh, best of luck. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you.
Good luck, man. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Terrific Tuesday tomorrow. I think I'm in-house all this week. I'm Brandon. As far as you know.
Unless something pops up over the next day or two.
Could that change in the next few minutes?
Could, very well could, Moon. I'll brace myself for it.
Here you are.
Just try not to be out on payday.
All right, well, is that this Friday?
Yes, sir.
I was hoping to be gone Friday. All right, we got to go. See you tomorrow, folks.